just going to go over the file management here in GCD 5. I'm inside of a project it's called Lower Owen's Test. Doesn't actually matter what project we're talking about. What I want to show you though is that this is a project that has a couple of surveys loaded into it. And actually I should show you as well that inside those surveys we also have some associated surfaces and an error calculation. And there have been some change detection analyses. If we go to load, there's a number of change detection analyses here. And in addition, there has been some budget segregation analyses. So if I ignore this for a second and go to the project by double clicking, the project folder, sorry, by double clicking on that project. Oops. There we go. Here's this project, and inside of it are these three things that are the main components of any project in GCD. One is this GCD project file, which we can open up with any text editor. It happens to be an XML file, and we'll take a look at the contents of that in a little bit here. The other is this inputs folder, and this is where all the inputs reside. And then the final is this analyses folder where all of our analyses reside. So let's look first at the inputs folder, and then we'll look at the analyses folder, and then we'll look at how those are represented in the project file itself. So inside the inputs folder, what we find here are there's two folders, and let's notice the name of those, DM09 and DM11 August. If I come back into here, those are the survey names that were given, and if I take a closer look, these were survey names that weren't specified. They were just inherited from the file names of the DEMs that were loaded. And so, oops. And so inside of DEM09, what we'll see is a copy of the DEM that was loaded. That's right there. This happens to be an IMG Imagine file. And then we'll also see a hillshade that was created as part of the loading of that into the survey library. And then the associated surfaces, there's a point density surface, and that was in here, and this name is the name of that. Slope surface is right here. And then there's some air surfaces, and so these are given the name. This is just the uniform here. Okay, so we can look at DM11 August, and we see a similar sort of situation. And so what this structure allows you to do is load as many associated surfaces as you want. They each get their own folder, and build as many air surfaces as you want. They each get their own folder. And that's where all the input information is saved. So now if we come back out to the analyses folder, inside of it there's a change detection folder. And if we go into there, what happens is for every single combination of DOD that we look at, in this case DM11 minus DM09, it gets a folder. And so there's only one in here, but you could have other combinations. Let's say there was a DM08, so we could have DM11 minus 08 or DM09 minus 08. Those would be further DOD folders. Inside those demo difference folders are all the different uncertainty analyses that were performed to get to thresholded dem of difference. So if we take a look here, this one is a simple minimum level detection, 8 centimeter. This one's a propagated air, uniform, 6 centimeter, and uniform. Those are the two air surfaces. Notice that those air surfaces have the same names right there. So uniform 6 centimeter as the air and minus uniform as the air surfaces that they were derived from for that DEM combination. And if I were to go into any of these, let's say I go into this one, actually, that's what I want. sorry, I'm going to go into this one for example. And so they have in here a number of common files that get created. So these files right here, those are the files that get created from the change detection panel. And so there's a couple of output images that are PNG files. There's volumetric elevation change distribution, that's the volume.png, and there's the area PNG. Notice that these TIFFs aren't showing up. That's because these are actually geotiffs. And so the raw is the raw dim of difference without any uncertainty analysis, and then the thresholded is the actual thresholded dim of difference. And then there's also some CSV files, and so the CSV files for raw and for thresholded represent, if we open one up here in Excel, it's on my other screen here, hold on. These are basically just your histograms, and so these are the bins, and then this is the area, the volume, and the number of cells, and so you can recreate histograms from those in any program you like. And then there's this summary.xml file, and this has the tabular information that shows up in the change detection panel for raw and thresholded, as well as a volumetric uncertainty estimate associated with the calculations. And so inside of this folder, this one happens to have a budget segregation. These other ones didn't. So this is one where budget segregation was performed. If I go into here, I can have, again, a whole number of folders. These folders are basically the file name of the shapefile or feature class that was used to do the budget segregation. Inside of that will be at least one folder, but as many folders as you want, which are basically the fields and the text fields that were used from that feature class to do the segregation. Inside of that, we see some standard stuff. We have some pretty ugly histograms at this point, but I'm sorry, not histograms, but pie charts. And then we have elevation change distributions for the different categories. So it looks like there was an aerial and a volumetric for a category called sum deposition, and then there was an aerial and a volumetric for a category called sum scour. And you'll also notice that for sum deposition and sum scour, there are two XML files. These XML files can be opened up in Excel, and they have in them these tables that have the stats for that category. There's also a class legend which shows all of the categories that were used. So in this case, class 1, class 2 were sum deposition and sum scour. And there's also the raw histograms as a CSV file. And then there's this class summary.xml, and this one actually shows all of the information combined into one table. And so that's the basic structure of the files here. And if we go back to our XML file and we look at this, I'm going to collapse down these categories. You can look at these if you want to have the categories. You can use Notepad++, or you could use even just a regular browser will allow you to do this, a web browser. And so I've got a whole bunch of XML tags in here. So DEM survey, I've got two DEM surveys. Well, those are the two DEM surveys. Here it's DEM09, and then this one was DEM11OG. Right? And then I've got surfaces, which are associated surfaces with each of those. So it tells us which surface we're talking about here. And there's these different error calculations that were done, and different properties associated with those, and then these are the different uncertainty analyses that were done. And so each of these things, you know, they have the path to the layer source, the path to the histogram source, tell us exactly what type of calculations were done, etc. So this is the information that gets stored in the project, And this is what enables us to, inside of this software, to go into something like the survey library and then have this information. We can double click on it and it populates all this stuff. It's just populating it based off that XML file. So occasionally, if things go wrong and you understand what's going wrong, you can go in and make changes to the XML file. A real common thing is, if you notice this cdocs program, blah, 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 all the way down to here, this directory, right? That is at the beginning of all of these, right? And so if you were to take and pull and move this project to a whole nother computer with a different directory structure, you could come in here and you could do a find and replace for that and put in whatever the new path was and replace that everywhere so that you could update that. You wouldn't want to do that while the GCD is open in a project inside of ArcMap, but you could do that after you've closed the project and then try to reopen it. And it should, in quotes, work, and I could update that for you, for example. So that's a not very concise, but a fairly thorough overview of the file management inside of GCD.